Welcome back to the Deep Dive. If you're looking for a quick way to get informed on, well, one of the most romanticized careers out there, you're definitely in the right place. Today, we're diving deep into the professional poker lifestyle. You know the image, right? The movie shows someone, like, effortlessly jet-setting, playing these huge pots in Monaco, leaning back, cool as anything, while the chips just pile up. It's sold as this ultimate dream.
Mm.
Freedom, fortune, high roller glamour, just pure talent and instinct.
Yeah, that image is incredibly powerful. It definitely pulls in thousands of people who are chasing that status, that independence. But what happens when you look behind the curtain? Past the social media highlights, our sources today, well, they're pretty clear. This lifestyle, it's less about easy glamour and much more about a relentless, grinding kind of self-discipline
Yep.
and mental resilience. So for you, the learner, our mission here is to cut through that myth. We want to understand the really demanding, frankly, non-glamorous foundation that holds up a successful pro career.
Okay, right. Let's unpack that. Because if the goal is financial freedom, why do so many people, well, crash and burn? What's the main draw that keeps this fantasy alive? And maybe more importantly, what's the reality that often shatters it pretty quickly?
The allure is straightforward, really. It's the potential for high earnings, maybe even uncapped. It's total control over your schedule. And of course, the travel with the big tournament circuits. It looks like living life completely on your own terms. But the first big truth our sources really hammer home is that, in the long run, talent and luck, they're secondary. The actual pillars holding up a profitable career are strategic rigor, emotional toughness, and just relentless discipline.
So the big mistake is thinking that just because the potential payout is huge, the work itself is easy, or maybe even fun all the time. But it sounds more like running an incredibly intense small business,
Yeah.
where you're the only employee and also the biggest risk factor.
That's exactly it. That's the insight. It is a business. And the edge, the competitive advantage, it comes from structure. And what's fascinating, kind of paradoxical, is that this pursuit of ultimate freedom seems to require ultimate rigidity. The life of a successful pro, contrary to being all spontaneous and carefree, it revolves around a meticulously planned routine. It's all designed to optimize focus and performance.
Hold on. If the whole point is independence, escaping the 9 to 5, why are our sources describing a routine that sounds, frankly, more restrictive than a standard office job? Let's walk through this typical day. It starts surprisingly early, doesn't it?
It does. It's restrictive because their peak cognitive performance is the product they're selling. The sources detail a morning start, often somewhere between 7 a.m. and 9 a.m. This isn't just rolling out of bed, it's preparation, mental warm-up, and crucially, it includes physical activity.
Okay, jogging, yoga. You'd think that's optional for someone whose job is basically sitting in a chair for hours on end. Why is physical fitness so non-negotiable for what seems like a sedentary activity?
It's all about cognitive endurance, you see. They aren't training for a marathon physically. They're training their bodies to handle the sheer mental fatigue, to maintain that peak focus for, say, 6, maybe 8 hours straight. Your brain just functions better when the body's active. It reduces tension, boosts stamina. It's physiological.
And fueling this mental machine, it's not pizza and energy drinks at 2 a.m., is it? Pros seem really focused on nutrition, protein-rich meals, balanced stuff. Is that just for physical energy, or can, like, bad blood sugar actually make you a worse player?
Oh, absolutely it can. Decision-making is their job. Full stop. If your blood sugar is spiking and crashing, your ability to calculate odds, to analyze what your opponent might have, to manage risk, it suffers. Immediately. They're basically managing their metabolism to ensure their mental clarity doesn't dip during those critical hands.
Right, okay. So physical prep, nutritional prep, then comes the serious mental stuff. Meditation, mindfulness, visualization. It sounds like rehearsing for your brain before the actual performance even starts.
Exactly. They're priming the neural pathways for strategic thought. They might review specific strategy articles or maybe visualize playing through tough spots. The goal is to enter the playing session calm, focused, non-reactive, in an optimal state.
Okay, now here's where it gets really interesting for me, the midday routine. Because the really successful players, they spend a huge chunk of their day just studying, not playing, studying. Like, it's full-time school.
It's intense, it's ruthless, data-driven analysis. They treat their own performance data like a venture capitalist reviews a portfolio. Coldly, objectively. They use specialized software tools, things like ICM calculators and range analyzers. These aren't just basic spreadsheets, they're quite complex.
And what are these tools actually doing for them? What's the output?
They're basically designed to remove ego and guesswork from the equation. An ICM calculator, for instance, helps figure out the best decisions in tournaments based on chip value versus actual dollar value, which changes constantly. A range analyzer lets them simulate millions of hands to find the mathematically optimal response to pretty much anything an opponent might do. They are systematically finding their own mistakes and fixing them, based purely on expected value, EV, not on gut feelings or frustration.
So it's not just passive learning. They're setting daily goals, analyze X number of hands, hit certain win targets, maybe zero in on improving one specific skill. They're professional students of their own game, constantly tweaking, constantly adapting.
And then usually in the afternoon comes the actual grind, the main playing session. Typically maybe 4 to 6 hours long. This is where they implement all that study. But even here, profitability often hinges on a couple of really structured practices.
Okay, like what? What are those practices?
Well, the first one is table selection, which sounds simple, but it's crucial.
Right, actively choosing tables with weaker opponents. So you're not just playing cards, you're strategically placing your capital where it has the highest chance of return, like an investor.
Exactly. And the second practice, maybe the most fundamental discipline of all, is bankroll management. This is where you see a massive difference between pros and amateurs. A pro sticks to incredibly strict rules. Often they maintain, say, 50 to 100 buy-ins for whatever stakes they're playing.
Okay, maybe quickly clarify for the listener what exactly is a buy-in here.
Sure, a buy-in is just the standard amount of money needed to sit down and play in a particular game or tournament. So maintaining 50 or 100 buy-ins means that even if they have a really bad session and lose one full buy-in, it's only, 1% or 2% of their total operating capital. They're protecting the business, their poker bankroll, above everything else. And honestly, maintaining that discipline, plus the intense focus needed during play, it's mentally exhausting. It requires constant attention to things like hydration, taking short scheduled breaks.
Wow. It's a long day. And even when the playing session ends, the work still isn't quite done, is it? The evening sounds like it's all about review, recovery, and basically bracing for tomorrow's psychological battle.
Absolutely. Post-session, it's common to immediately do a session review. Go back over critical hands, especially the ones where they lost significant money, to pinpoint mistakes or spots they could have played better. Many keep detailed poker journals. They don't just track wins and losses, but also their mental state, stress triggers, how they felt, their emotional responses during play. This is all geared towards building self-awareness and long-term psychological stability.
And recovery. That sounds key. Getting enough sleep, like 7 to 9 hours, maybe a digital detox, spending time on hobbies or with family, completely away from poker.
Yeah, without that proper recovery, the ability to focus, to manage emotions during the next high-pressure session, just degrades. It's essential for sustainability.
This whole routine sounds incredibly demanding. But we haven't even really hit the hardest part yet, have we? Let's shift to Section 3, navigating the volatility and stress. Because the high stakes, the long hours, they're stressful enough. But it's the variance that seems to truly separate the pros who make it from those who don't.
Variance. Yes, that is the core psychological challenge of this profession. And it's precisely why that emotional discipline we talked about is so paramount. Variance isn't just, winning some and losing some. It means you could play perfectly according to optimal strategy for 6 weeks straight, making the mathematically correct choice every single time and still be down money, significantly down. It's that period where short-term bad luck completely masks your long-term skill edge.
Wow, okay. Operating without that immediate feedback loop, knowing you're doing everything right but the results are still negative, that's a unique kind of psychological pressure cooker. How on earth do they cope with that kind of crushing inconsistency?
Well, that's where the mental training really comes into play. Things like meditation and breathing exercises aren't just for general relaxation. They're specific tools pros use to prevent tilt.
Tilt, right. That's a key poker term we should probably define here.
Yeah, tilt is basically that state where your emotions, usually frustration, anger, maybe overconfidence after a win takeover, you start making irrational decisions, abandoning your strategy, often trying to win back losses quickly or getting reckless. It's destructive. Pros use mindfulness techniques to recognize that emotional spike the second it happens, calm their nervous system, and force themselves to stick to their pre-planned optimal strategy, regardless of how unfair the cards feel in that moment.
So, in a way, their biggest opponent often isn't even the player across the table. It's their own internal reaction, their ego, their emotions when faced with a big, statistically unfair downswing.
Precisely. And they also rely heavily on support networks. Talking to peers, other pros, maybe a coach, or even just friends outside poker. It gives them an outlet to vent frustration, discuss tricky spots, or get strategic feedback without letting that emotional baggage spill over into their actual game decisions. You really can't manage this level of constant stress and financial uncertainty in isolation.
And we should be really clear about the money side too, because it flies in the face of the myth of just constant cash flow. Because earnings are so variable, income is incredibly inconsistent, right?
Yes, absolutely. The sources are very clear on this. Even top-tier, highly skilled players can and do experience losing months, sometimes several losing months in a row, purely due to variance. That's why professionals must stick rigidly to those bankroll rules we mentioned. They often keep only a small fraction of their total poker capital accessible for personal living expenses. They have to be financially conservative by necessity. The whole system is designed to ensure the business can survive those inevitable, sometimes prolonged, losing stretches.
Okay, and what about the travel element? That's always portrayed as part of the glamour, flying off to the World Series of Poker in Vegas or the EPT in Europe. Does the romance of globetrotting hold up under this kind of demanding, structured lifestyle?
Not for long, usually. It quickly becomes just part of the job. While it might be exciting at first, that constant international travel can become incredibly draining. You're dealing with jet lag, isolation, living out of suitcases in generic hotel rooms. The perceived glamour gets replaced pretty quickly by logistical headaches and the constant challenge of maintaining peak mental focus while your body clock is completely messed up. Really, the travel is more of a necessary operating cost for the business, not a perpetual vacation.
Right. So, putting this all together, what does this mean for you, the listener, trying to get your head around this incredibly demanding career? We've outlined the grind, the stress, the structure. What are the actual rewards that make someone endure all of this?
That's the crucial question, isn't it? And despite all the difficulty, the potential rewards are significant. The financial upside, if you can achieve sustained success, is obviously huge. The flexibility being your own boss, setting your own hours, working remotely, that's a massive draw for many. But perhaps the less obvious reward, the one that really resonates in our sources, is the intense personal growth. Poker, played at this level, demands and develops extraordinary skills. Deep strategic thinking, making complex decisions under immense pressure, and profound emotional discipline. Skills that are transferable, really.
So the takeaway is, yes, the glamorous high-earning poker life can exist for a select few, but it's built entirely on this hidden, non-glamorous foundation. A foundation of incredibly structured hard work, relentless analysis, constant self-improvement, stuff most people never see or even imagine. The freedom they might achieve is really a byproduct of extreme dedication, not the starting point.
That's the core lesson, I think. Success in this very specific field comes from that dedication, that intense focus, and the developed ability to handle stress and variance by implementing rigorous structure. And interestingly, even if you're just a casual player, you can actually benefit enormously from adopting elements of this pro routine. Things like setting aside time for study, being more structured in your practice, and definitely applying disciplined bankroll management, even at lower stakes.
Yeah. The ultimate truth seems to be that every single moment of that high-stakes tension, every big televised win, is really preceded by hundreds, maybe thousands of hours of silent, tedious study and mental preparation.
Exactly. So maybe here's a final thought, something provocative for you to consider as we wrap up. If a successful professional poker career is fundamentally about extreme self-management, strict bankroll discipline, and continuous strategic study, essentially, mastering risk and optimizing personal performance under pressure, what habits from this highly rigorous routine could potentially be applied to manage risk and sharpen focus in your own career, or even just in how you approach learning and tackling challenges?
That's a fascinating question. Definitely something worth mulling over next time you're facing a tough decision under pressure. Thanks for joining us for the deep dive.